Book 6. All night the dreadless angel, unpursued, through heaven's wide champaign held his way, till morn, waked by the circling hours, with rosy hand unbarred the gates of light. There is a cave within the mount of God, fast by his throne, where light and darkness and perpetual round lodge and dislodge by turns, which makes through heaven grateful vicissitude, like day and night. Light issues forth, and at the other door obsequious darkness enters, till her hour to veil the heaven, though darkness there might well seem twilight here. And now went forth the moon, such as in highest heaven, arrayed in gold imperial, from before her vanished night, shot through with orient beams, when all the plain, covered with thick embattled squadrons bright, chariots and flaming arms, and fiery steeds reflecting blaze on blaze, first met his view. War he perceived, war in procinct, and found already known what he for news had thought to have reported. Gladly then he mixed among those friendly powers, who him received with joy and acclamations loud, that one that of so many myriads fallen, yet one returned not lost. On to the sacred hill they led him high applauded, and present before the seat supreme, from whence a voice from midst a golden cloud thus mild was heard: Servant of God, well done. Well hast thou fought the better fight, who single hast maintained against revolted multitudes the cause of truth, in word mightier than they in arms, and for the testimony of truth hast borne universal reproach, far worse to bear than violence. For this was all thy care, to stand approved in sight of God, the world's judge thee perverse. The easier conquest now remains thee, aided by this host of friends, back on thy foes, more glorious to return than scorn thou didst depart, and to subdue by force, who reason by their law refuse, right reason for their law, and for their king Messiah, who by right of merit reigns. Go, Michael, of celestial armies prince, now in military prowess next. Gabriel, lead forth to battle these my sons invincible. Lead forth my armed saints, by thousands and by millions ranged for fight, equal in number to that godless crew rebellious, them with fire and hostile arms, fearless assault, and to the brow of heaven pursuing, drive them out from God and bliss into their place of punishment, the gulf of Tartarus, which ready opens wide as fiery chaos to receive their fall. So spake the sovereign voice, and clouds began to darken all the hill, and smoke to roll in dusky wreaths, reluctant flames, the signs of wrath awakened, nor with less dread the loud ethereal trumpet from on high gan blow, who struck a man the powers militant that stood for heaven, mighty quadrate joined of union irresistible, moved on in silence their bright legions, to the sounds of instrumental harmony that breathed heroic ardor to adventurous deeds unlike their godless leaders, in the cause of God and his Messiah. On they move indissolubly firm, nor obvious hill, nor straightening vale, nor wood, nor stream divides their perfect ranks, for high above the ground their march was, and the passive air upbore their nimble tread, as when the total kind of birds in orderly array on wing came summoned over Eden to receive their names of thee, to over many a tract of heaven they marched, many a province wide tenfold the strength of this terrene, that length far in the horizon to the north appeared from skirt to skirt a fiery region, stretched in battailious aspect, and nearer view bristled with bright, upright beams innumerable of rigid spears, and helmets thronged, and shields various, with boastful argument portrayed, the banded powers of Satan, hastening on with furious expedition, For they weaned the selfsame day by fight, or by surprise to win the mount of God, and on his throne to sit the envier of his state, the proud aspirer. But their thoughts proved fond and vain in the midway, though strange to us it seemed at first that angel should with angel war, and in fierce hosting meet, who want to meet so oft in festivals and joy and love unanimous, the sons of one great sire hymning the eternal Father. But the shout of battle now began, and the rushing sound of onset ended sooner each milder thought. High in the midst, exalted as a god, the apostate in his sun-bright chariot sat, idol of majesty divine, and clothed with flaming cherubim and golden shields. Then lighted from his gorgeous throne, for now 'twixt host and host but narrow space was left, the dreadful interval, and front to front presented stood in terrible array of hideous length. Before the cloudy van on the rough edge of battle ere it joined, Satan with vast and haughty strides advanced, came towering, armed in adamant and gold. Abdiel the sight endured not, where he stood among the mightiest, bent on highest deeds, and thus his own undaunted heart explores. O heaven, that such resemblance of the highest should yet remain, where faith and realty remain not. Wherefore should not strength and might there fail where virtue fails, or weakest prove or boldest, though to sight unconquerable? His puissance, trusting in the Almighty's aid, I mean to try, whose reason I have tried unsound and false. Nor is it aught but just that he who in debate of truth hath won should win in arms, in both disputes alike victor. Though brutish that contest and foul, where reason hath to deal with force, yet so must reason is that reason overcome. So pondering, and from his armed peers forth stepping opposite, halfway he met his daring foe, at this prevention more incensed, and thus securely him defied. Proud art thou met, thy hope was to have reached the height of thy aspiring unopposed, the throne of God unguarded, and in his side abandoned at the terror of thy power, potent tongue. Fool, not to think how vain against the omnipotent to raise in arms, who out of smallest things could without end would have raised incessant armies to defeat thy folly, though his solitary hand, reaching beyond all limit, at one blow unaided could have finished thee, and whelmed thy legions under darkness. But thou seest all are not of thy train. There be who faith prefer and piety to God, though then to thee not visible, who and I alone seemed in the world erroneous to dissent from all. My sect thou seest, now learn too late what few may sometimes know and thousands err. Whom the grand foe with scornful eye askance thus answered, Ill for thee, but in wished hour my revenge first sought, for thou returnest from flight, seditious angel, to receive thy merited reward, the first to say of this right hand provoked, since first that tongue inspired with contradiction durst oppose a third part of the gods, and synod met their deities to assert, who while they feel vigor divine within them can allow omnipotence to none. But well thou comest before thy fellows, ambitious to win for me some plume, that thy success may show destruction to the rest. Let this pause between, unanswered lest thou boast, to let thee know, that first I thought that liberty and heaven to heavenly souls had all been won. But now I see that most through sloth had rather serve ministering spirits trained up in feast and song, such as thou armed the minstrelsy of heaven, servility with freedom to contend, and both their deeds compared this day shall prove. To whom in brief thus Abdiel stern replied, Apostate, still thou errest, nor end wilt find from erring from the path of truth remote. Unjustly thou depravest with the name of servitude to serve whom God ordains, or nature. God and nature bid the same, when he who rules is worthiest and excels them who he governs. This is servitude, to serve the unwise, or him who hath rebelled against his worthier. Is thine now serve thee, thyself not free, but to thyself enthralled. Yet lewdly darest our ministering upbraid. Reign thou in hell, thy kingdom. Let me serve in heaven, God ever blessed, and his divine behests obey, worthiest to be obeyed. Yet chains in hell, not realms expect. Meanwhile for me returned, as erst thou said from flight, this greeting on thy impious crest receive. So saying, a noble stroke he lifted high, which hung not, but so swift with tempest fell on the proud crest of Satan, that no sight, no motion of swift thought, less could his shield such ruin intercept. 10 paces huge he back recoiled, the 10th unbended knee his massy spear upstayed, as if on earth winds underground or waters forcing way sidelong had pushed a mountain from his seat, half sunk with all his pines. Amazement seized the rebel thrones, but greater rage to see thus foiled their mightiest. Our joys filled and shout, presage of victory and fierce desire of battle, whereat Michael bid sound the archangel trumpet. Through the vast of heaven it sounded, our faithful armies rung Hosanna to the highest, nor stood it gaze the adverse legions, nor less hideous joined the horrid shock. Now storming fury rose, and clamor such as heard in heaven till now was never. Arms on armor clashing brayed horrible discord, and the maddening wheels of brazen chariots raged. Dire was the noise of conflict. Overhead the dismal hiss of fiery darts and flaming volleys flew, and flying vaulted either host with fire. So under fiery cope together rushed both battles main, with ruinous assault and inextinguishable rage. All heaven resounded, and had earth been there, all earth had to her centers shook. What wonder, when millions of fierce encountering angels fought on either side, the least of whom could wield these elements, and arm him with the force of all the regions, how much more of power, army against army, numberless to raise, dreadful combustion warring, and disturb though not destroy their happy native seat. Had not the eternal King omnipotent, from his stronghold of heaven, high overruled and limited their might, though numbered such as each divided legion might have seemed a numerous host, and strength each armed hand a legion, led in fight, yet leader seemed each warrior single as in chief, expert when to advance or stand or turn the sway of battle, open when and when to close the ridges of grim war. No thought of flight, none of retreat, no unbecoming deed that argued fear. Each on himself relied, as only in his arm the moment lay of victory. Deeds of eternal fame were done, but infinite, for wide was spread that war in various, sometime on firm ground a standing fight, then soaring on main wing tormented all the air. All air seemed then conflicting fire. Long time in even scale the battle hung, till Satan, who that day prodigious power had shown, and met in arms no equal, ranging through the dire attack of fighting seraphim confused, at length saw where the sword of Michael smote, and felled squadrons at once, and with huge two-handed sway brandished aloft the horrid edge came down wide wasting. Such destruction to withstand he haste, and opposed the rocky orb of tenfold adamant, his ample shield of vast circumference. His approach the great archangel from his warlock toil surceased, and glad as hoping here to end intestine war in heaven, the arch-foe subdued or captive dragged in chains, with tassel frown and visage all inflamed, first thus began. Author of evil, unknown to thy revolt, unnamed in heaven, now plenteous, as thou seest these acts of hateful strife, hateful to all, though heaviest by just measure on thyself and thy adherents. How hast thou disturbed heaven's blessed peace, and into nature brought misery, uncreated till the crime of thy rebellion? How hast thou instilled thy malice into thousands, once upright and faithful, now proved false? But think not here to trouble a holy rest. Heaven cast thee out from all her confines. Heaven, the seat of bliss, brooks not the works of violence and war. Hence then, and go with thee along thy offspring to the place of evil, hell, thou and thy wicked crew. There mingle broils, ere this avenging sword begin thy doom, or on such sudden vengeance wing from God precipitate thee with augmented pain. So spake the Prince of Angels, to whom thus the adversary, nor think thou with wind of airy threats to awe whom yet with deeds thou canst not. Hast thou turned the least of these to flight, or if to fall, that they can rise unvanquished, easier to transact with me, that thou shouldst hope imperious, with threats to chase me hence? Ere not that so shall end the strife which thou call'st evil, but we style the strife of glory, which we mean to win, or turn this heaven itself into the hell thou fablest, here for however to dwell free, if not to reign. Meanwhile thy utmost force, and join him named Almighty to thy aid, I fly not, but have sought thee far and nigh. They ended parle, and both addressed for fight unspeakable. For who, though with tongue of angels, can relate, or to what things liken on earth conspicuous, that may lift human imagination to such heights of godlike power? For like as gods they seemed, stood they or moved, in stature, motion, arms, fit to decide the empire of great heaven. Now waved their mighty swords, and in the air made horrid circles. Two broad suns their shields blazed opposite, while expectation stood in horror. From each hand with speed retired, were erst the thickest fight the angelic throng, and left large field unsafe within the wind of such commotion. Such as, to set forth great things by small, if nature's concord broke, among the constellations war were sprung, two planets rushing from aspect malign of fiercest opposition in mid-sky should combat, and their jarring spheres confound. Together both with next almighty arm, uplifted imminent, one stroke they aimed that might determine, need not repeat as not a power at once, nor odds appeared in might or swift prevention, but the sword of Michael from the armory of God was given him tempered so, that neither keen nor solid might resist that edge. They met the sword of Satan with such steep force, to smite descending and in half-cut sheer, nor stayed, but with swift wheel reverse, deep entering, sheared all his right side. Then Satan first knew pain, and writhed him to and fro convolved, so sore the grinding sword with discontinuous wound passed through him, but the ethereal substance closed not long divisible, and from the gash a stream of nectarous humor issuing flowed sanguine, such as celestial spirits might bleed, and all his armor stained erewhile so bright. Forthwith on all sides to his aid was run by angels many and strong, who interposed defense, while others bore him on their shields back to his chariot, where it stood retired from off the fowls of war. There they him laid, gnashing for anguish, and despite and shame to find himself not matchless, and his pride humbled by such rebuke, so far beneath his confidence to equal God in power. Yet soon he healed, for spirits that live throughout, vital in every part, not as frail man in entrails, heart or head, liver or reins, cannot but by annihilating die, nor in their liquid texture mortal wound receive, no more than can fluid air. All heart they live, all head, all eye, all ear, all intellect, all sense, and as they please they limn themselves, and color, shape, or size assume, as likes them best, condense or rare. Meanwhile, in other parts, like deeds deserve memorial, where the might of Gabriel fought, and with fierce ensigns pierced the deep array of Moloch, furious king, who him defied, and that his chariot wheels to dragon bound threatened, nor from the Holy One in heaven refrained his tongue blasphemous, but anon down cloven to the waist, with shattered arms and uncouth pain, fled bellowing. On each wing were Uriel and Raphael, his vaunting foe, though huge, and in a rock of diamond armed, vanquished Adramelech and Asmodai, two potent thrones that to be less than gods disdained, but meaner thoughts learned in their flight, mangled with ghastly wounds through plate and mail. Nor stood unmindful Abdiel to annoy the atheist crew, but with redoubled blow Ariel and Arioch, and the violence of Aramiel, scorched and blasted, overthrew. I might relate of thousands, and their names eternalize here on earth, but those elect angels, contented with their fame in heaven, seek not the praise of men. The other sword in might, the wondrous in an acts of war, not nor of renown less eager, yet by doom cancelled from heaven in sacred memory, nameless in dark oblivion, let them dwell. For strength from truth divided, and from just, illaudable, not merits, but dispraise and ignominy, and yet to glory aspires vainglorious, and through infamy she seeks fame. Therefore eternal silence be their doom. Now their mightiest quelled, the battle swerved, with many an inroad gored, deformed routes entered in foul disorder, all the ground with shivered arrows strewn, on a heap chariot and charioteer lay overturned, and fiery foaming steeds. What stood recoiled over wearied, through the faint satanic host, defensive scarce, though with pale fear surprised. Then first with fear surprised, and sense of pain, fled ignominious, to such evil brought by sin of disobedience, to that hour not liable to fear or flight or pain. Far otherwise, the inviolable saints in cubic phalanx, firm, advanced, entire, invulnerable, impenetrably armed, such advantages their innocence gave them above their foes, not to have sinned, not to have disobeyed. In fight they stood unwearied, unobnoxious to be pained by wound, though from their place by violence moved. Now night her course began, and over heaven-inducing darkness grateful truce imposed, and silence and the odious din of war. Under her cloudy covert both retired, victor and vanquished. On the foughten field Michael and his angels, prevalent and camping, placed in guard their watches round, cherubic waving fires. On the other part, Satan with his rebellious disappeared, far in the darkness dislodged and void of rest, his potentates to council called by night, and in the midst thus undismayed began. O now in danger tried, now known in arms, not to be overpowered, companions dear, found worthy not of liberty alone, to mean pretense, but what we more affect, honor, dominion, glory, and renown, who have sustained one day in doubtful fight, and if one day, why not eternal days, what heaven's Lord had powerfulest to send against us from about his throne, and judge sufficient to subdue us to his will, but proves not so. Then fallible it seems, of future we may deem him, though till now omniscience thought. True is, less firmly armed, some disadvantage we endured in pain, till now not known, but known as soon contend. Since now we find this our imperial form, incapable of mortal injury, imperishable, though pierced with wound, soon closing, and by native vigor healed. Of evil then, so small as easy, think the remedy. Perhaps more valid arms, weapons more violent, when next we meet, may serve to better us and worse our foes, or equal what between us made the odds of nature none. If other hidden cause left them superior, while we can preserve unhurt our minds and understanding sound, due search and consultation will disclose. He sat, and in the assembly next up stood Nisroch, the principalities the prime. As one he stood escaped from cruel fight, sore toiled, his rival arms to havoc hewn, and cloudy in aspect, thus answering spake. Deliverer from new lords, leader to free enjoyment of our right as gods, yet hard for gods, and to unequal work we find against unequal arms to fight in pain, against unpained, impassive, from which evil ruin must needs ensue. For what avails valor, strength, though matchless, quelled with pain which all subdues, makes remiss the hands of mightiest. Sense of pleasure we may well spare out of life perhaps, not repine, but live content, which is calmest life. But pain is perfect misery, the worst of evils, and excessive overturns all patience. He who therefore can invent with what more forceful we may offend our yet unwounded enemies, or arm ourselves with like defense, to me deserves no less than for deliverance what we owe. Whereto with look composed Satan replied, Not uninvented that, which thou aright believe so main to our success I bring. Which of us who beholds the bright surface of this ethereous mold whereon we stand, this continent of spacious heaven, adorned with plant, fruit, flower, ambrosial gems and gold, whose eyes so superficially surveys these things, is not to mind from whence they grow deep underground, minerals, materials dark and crude, those spirituous and fiery spume, till touched with heaven's ray and tempered they shoot forth so beauteous opening to the ambient light. These in their dark nativity the deep shall yield us, pregnant with infernal flame, which into hollow engines long and round thick rammed, that the other bore with touch of fire, dilated and furious, shall send forth from far with thundering noise among our foes such implements of mischief as shall dash to pieces and overwhelm whatever stands adverse, that they shall fear we have disarmed the thunder of his only dreaded bolt. Nor long shall be our labor, yet ere dawn effect shall end our wish. Meanwhile revive, abandon fear, to strength and counsel joined think nothing hard, much less to be despaired. He ended, and his words their drooping cheer enlightened, and their languished hope revived. The invention all admired, and each how he to be the inventor missed, and so easily it seemed once found, which yet unfound most would have thought impossible. Yet haply of thy race in future days, if malice should abound, some one intent on mischief or inspired with devilish machinations might devise like instrument to plague the sons of men for sin, on war and mutual slaughter bent. Forthwith from council to the work they flew, none arguing stood, innumerable hands were ready, in a moment up they turned wide the celestial soil, and saw beneath the originals of nature in their crude conception. Sulphurous and nitrous foam they found, they mingled, and with subtle art concocted and adjusted, they reduced to blackest grain, and into store conveyed. Part hidden veins digged up, nor at this earth and trails unlike, the mineral and stone whereof to found their engines and their balls of missive ruin, part incentive reed provide, pernicious with one touch to fire. So all ere durst day spring, under conscious night secret they finished, in an order set with silent circumspection unespied. Now when fair morn orient in heaven appeared, uprose the victor angels, into arms the matin trumpet sung. In arms they stood of golden panoply, refulgent host, soon banded. Others from the dawning hills looked round, and scouts each coast, light-armed, scour each quarter, to descry the distant foe, where lodged and where fled, and if for fight, if in motion or in halt. Him soon they met under spread ensigns moving nigh, in slow but firm battalion. Back with speediest sails, Zophiel of cherubim, the swiftest wing, came flying, and in mid-air aloud thus cried, "Arm, warriors, arm for fight! The foe at hand, whom fled we thought, will save us long pursuit this day, not fear his flight. So thick a cloud he comes, and settled in his face I see sad resolution and secure. Let each his adamantine coat gird well, and each fit well his helm, grip fast his orbed shield, borne even or high, for this day will pour down, if I conjecture aught, no drizzling shower, but rattling storms of arrows barbed with fire." So warned he them aware themselves, and soon in order, quit of all impediment, instant without disturb they took alarm, and onward move embattled. When behold, not distant far, with heavy pace the foe, approaching gross and huge, and hollow cubed, training his devilish enginery, and impaled on every side with shadowing squadrons deep to hide the fraud. At interview both stood awhile, but suddenly ahead appeared Satan, and thus was heard commanding loud, "Vanguard, to right and left the fold unfront, that all may see who hate us, how we seek peace and composure, and with open breast stand ready to receive them, if they like our overture, and turn not back perverse, but that I doubt. However, witness heaven, witness thou anon, while we discharge freely our part. Thee who appointed stand, do as you have in charge, and briefly touch what we propound, and loud, that all may hear." So scoffing in ambiguous words, he scarce had ended, when to right and left the front divided, and to either flank retired, which to our eyes discovered new and strange a triple mounted row of pillars laid on wheels. For to pillars most they seemed, or hollow bodies made of oak or fir with branches lopped, or wood or mountain felled. Brands, iron, stony mold, had not their mouths with hideous orifice gaped on us wide, portending hollow truce. At each behind a seraph stood, and in his hand a reed stood waving tipped with fire. While we suspense collected stood within our thoughts amused, not long, for sudden all at once the reeds put forth, and to a narrow vent applied with nicest touch, immediate in a flame, but soon obscured with smoke, all heaven appeared, from those deep-throated angels belched, whose roar emboweled with outrageous noise the air, and all her entrails tore, disgorging foul their devilish glut, chained thunderbolts and hail of iron globes, which on the victor host leveled, with such impetuous fury smote, that whom they hit, none on their feet would stand, though standing else as rocks, but down they fell by thousands, angel on archangel roiled. The sooner for their arms, unarmed they might as easy as spirits evaded swift by switch contraction or remove, but now foul dissipation followed, and forced rout, nor served it to relax their serried files. What could they do? If on they rushed, repulse repeated, and indecent overthrow doubled, would render them yet more despised, and to their foes a laughter. For in view stood ranks of seraphim, another row impostured to displode their second tire of thunder. Back defeated to return they worse abhorred. Satan beheld their plight, and to his mates thus in derision called, "No friends, come why not on these victors proud? Erewhile they fierce were coming, then when we to entertain them fair with open front and breast, what could we more? Propounded terms of composition, straight they changed their minds, flew off and into strange vagaries fell. as they would dance, yet for a dance they seemed somewhat extravagant and wild, perhaps for joy of offered peace. But I suppose if our proposals once again were heard, we should compel them to a quick result. To whom thus Belial in like gamesome mood, the leader, the terms we sent were terms of weight, of hard contents, and full of force-urged home, such as we might perceive amused them all and stumbled many. Who receives them right had need from head to foot well understand. Not understood, this gift they have besides, they show us when our foes walk not upright. So they among themselves in pleasant vein stood scoffing, hyped in their thoughts beyond all doubt of victory, eternal might to match with their inventions they presumed so easy, and of his thunder made a scorn, and all his host derided, while they stood a while in trouble. But they stood not long, rage prompted them at length, and found them arms against such hellish mischief fit to oppose. Forthwith, behold the excellence, the power which God hath in his almighty angels placed. Their arms away they threw to the hills, for earth hath this variety from heaven of pleasure situate in hell or dale. Light as the lightning glimpse they ran, they flew from their foundations, loosening to and fro, they plucked the seated hills with all their load, rocks, waters, woods, and by the shaggy tops uplifting bore them in their hands. Amaze, be sure, and terror seized the rebel host, when coming towards them so dread they saw the bottom of the mountains upward turned, till on those cursed engines triple row they saw them whelmed, and all their confidence under the weight of mountains buried deep, and themselves invaded next. And then on their heads fair promontories flung, which in the air came shadowing, and oppressed whole legions armed. Their armor helped their harm, crushed in and bruised into their substance pent, which wrought them pain implacable, many a dolorous groan, long struggling underneath. There they could wind out of such prison, those spirits of purest light, purest at first, now gross by sin and groan. The rest in imitation to like arms betook them, and in the neighboring hills uptore. So hills amid the air encountered hills, hurled to and fro with ejaculation dire, that underground they thought and fought in dismal shade and infernal noise. War seemed a civil game to this uproar. Horrid confusion heaped upon confusion rose, and now all heaven had gone to rack, with ruin o'erspread, had not the Almighty Father, where he sits, shrined in his sanctuary of heaven secure, consulting on the sum of things, foreseen this tumult, and permitted all advised, that to his great purpose he might so fulfill, to honor his anointed Son, avenged upon his enemies, and to declare all power on him transferred. Whence to his Son, the assessor of his throne, he thus began. The effulgence of my glory, Son beloved, Son in whose face invisible is beheld visibly what by deity I am, in whose hand what by decree I do, second omnipotence, 2 days are past, 2 days as we compute the days of heaven, since Michael in his powers went forth to tame these disobedient. Such hath been their fight, as likeliest was, when two such foes met armed. For to themselves I left them, thou know'st, equal in their creation they were formed, save what hath sin impaired, which yet hath wrought insensibly, for I suspend their doom. Whence in perpetual fight they needs must last endless, no solution will be found. War wearied hath performed what war can do, and to disordered rage let loose the reins, with mountains as with weapons armed, which makes wild work in heaven, and dangerous to the main. 2 days are therefore past, the third is thine, for thee I have ordained it, and thus far have suffered, that the glory may be thine of ending this great war, since none but thou can end it. Into thee such virtue and grace immense I have transfused, that all may know in heaven and hell thy power above compare. This perverse commotion governed thus, to manifest thee worthiest to be heir of all things, to be heir and to be king by sacred unction, thy deserved right. But go then, thou mightiest in thy father's might, ascend my chariot, guide the rapid wheels that shake heaven's basis, bring forth all my war, my bow and thunder, my almighty arms gird on, and sword upon thy puissant thigh. Pursue these sons of darkness, drive them out from all heaven's bounds into the utter deep. There let them learn, as likes them, to despise God and Messiah, his anointed King. He said, and on his Son with rays direct shone full. He all his Father full expressed ineffably in his face received, and thus the filial Godhead answering spake. O Father, O supreme of heavenly thrones, first, highest, holiest, best, thou always seek to glorify thy Son. I always thee is most just. This I my glory account, my exultation, and my whole delight, that thou in me well pleased declarest thy will fulfilled, which to fulfill is all my bliss. Scepter and power thy giving I assume, and gladlier shall resign when in the end thou shalt be all in all, and I in thee forever, and in me all whom thou lovest, but whom thou hatest I hate, and can put on thy terrors as I put thy mildness on, image of thee in all things, and soon shall, armed with thy might, rid heaven of these rebelled, to their prepared ill mansion, driven down to chains of darkness, and the undying worm that from thy just obedience could revolt, whom to obey is happiness entire. Then shall thy saints unmixed, and from the impure far separate, circling thy holy mountain, unfeigned hallelujahs to thee sing, hymns of high praise, and I among them chief. So said, he over his scepter bowing, rose from the right hand of glory where he sat, and on the third sacred morn began to shine, dawning through heaven. Forth rushed with whirlwind sound the chariot of paternal deity, flashing thick flames, wheel within wheel undrawn, itself instinct with spirit, but convoyed by four cherubic shapes. 4 faces each had wondrance, as with stars their bodies all, and wings were set with eyes the wheels a barrel, and careering fires between. Over their heads a crystal firmament, whereon a sapphire throne, inlaid with pure amber and colors of the showery arch. He in celestial panoply, all armed of radiant Urim, work divinely wrought, ascended, and at his right hand victory sat eagle-winged. Beside him hung his bow and quiver with 3-bolted thunder stored, and from about him thick effusion rolled, the smoke and bickering flame and sparkles dire. Attended with 10,000 saints he onward came, far off his coming shone, and 20,000, neither number heard, chariots of God, half on each hand were seen. He in the wings of cherub robed sublime in the crystalline sky, and in sapphire throne, the lustrous far and wide, but by his own first seen, them unexpected joy surprised, when the great ensign of Messiah blazed aloft by angels borne, his sign in heaven, under whose conduct Michael soon reduced his army, circumfused on either wing, under their head embodied all in one. Before him power divine alway prepared. At his command the uprooted hills retired, each to his place. They heard his voice and went obsequious. Heaven his wonted face renewed, and with fresh flowers hill and valley smiled. This saw the hapless foes, but soon abjured, and to rebellious fight rallied their powers insensate, hope conceiving from despair. In heavenly spirits could such perverseness dwell? But to convince the proud what signs avail, or wondrous move the obdurate to relent, they harden more by what the might most reclaim, grieving to see his glory, and its sight took envy, and aspiring to his height, stood re-embattled fierce by force or fraud, weening to prosper, and at length prevail against God and Messiah, but to fall in universal ruin last, and now to final battle drew, disdaining flight, their faint retreat, when the great Son of God to all his hosts on either hand thus spake, Stand still in bright array, ye saints, here stand ye angels armed, this day from battle rest, faithful have been your warfare, and of God accepted, fearless in his righteous cause, and as ye have received, so ye have done invincibly. But of this cursed crew the punishment to other hand belongs. Vengeance is his, or whose he sole appoints. Number to this day's work is not ordained nor numb multitude. Stand only and behold God's indignation on these godless poured by me. Not you, but me they have despised, yet envied. Against me is all their rage, because the Father, to whom in heaven supreme kingdom and power and glory appertains, hath honored me according to his will. Therefore to me their doom he hath assigned, that they may have their wish to try with me in battle which the stronger proves, they all, or I alone against them. Since by strength they measure all, of other excellence not emulous, nor care who them excels, nor other strife with them do I vouchsafe. So spake the Son, and into terror changed his countenance, too severe to be beheld, and full of wrath bent on his enemies. At once the four spread out their starry wings with dreadful shade contiguous, and the orbs of his fierce chariot rolled, as with the sound of torrent floods or of a numerous host. He on his impious foes right onward drove, gloomy as night, and under his burning wheels the steadfast Empyrean throne shook throughout, all but the throne of itself of God. Full soon among them he arrived, and his right hand grasping 10,000 thunders which he sent before him, such as their souls in fixed plagues. They astonished, all resistance lost, all courage, down their idle weapons dropped, their shields and helmed heads he rode of thrones and mighty seraphim prostrate, that wished the mountains now might be again thrown on them as a shelter from his ire. Nor less on either side tempestuous fell his arrows from the fourfold visaged four, distinct with eyes, and from living wheels distinct alike with multitude of eyes. One spirit in them ruled, and every eye glared lightning, and shot forth pernicious fire amongst the accursed, that withered all their strength, and of their wonted vigor left them drained, exhausted, spiritless, afflicted, fallen. Yet half his strength he put not forth, but checked his thunder in mid-volley, for he meant not to destroy, but root them out of heaven. The overthrown he raised, and as a herd of goats or timorous flock together thronged, drove them before him thunderstruck, pursued with terrors and with furies to the bounds and crystal wall of heaven, which opening wide rolled inward, and the spacious gap disclosed into the wasteful deep. The monstrous sight struck them with horror backward, but far worse urged them behind. Headlong themselves they threw down from the verge of heaven, and eternal wrath burned after them to the bottomless pit. Hell heard the insufferable noise. Hell saw heaven ruining from heaven, and would have fled affrighted, but strict fate had cast too deep her dark foundations, and too fast had bound. 9 days they fell, confounded chaos roared, and felt tenfold confusion in their fall through his wide anarchy, so huge a rout encumbered him with a ruin. Hell at last, yawning, received them whole, and on them closed. Hell, their fit habitation, fraught with fire unquenchable, the house of woe and pain. Disburdened heaven rejoiced, and soon repaired her mural breach, returning whence it was rolled. Sole victor from the expulsion of his foes, Messiah his triumphal chariot turned. To meet him all the sons, his saints, who silent stood eyewitnesses of his almighty acts, with jubilee advanced. And as they went, shaded with branching palm, each order bright sung triumph, and hymn sung victorious King, Son, Heir, and Lord, to him dominion given, worthiest to reign. He celebrated, rode triumphant through mid-heaven, into the courts and temple of his mighty Father throned on high, who into glory him received, where now he sits at the right hand of bliss. Thus measuring things in heaven by things on earth at thy request, and that thou mayest beware by what is past, to thee I have revealed what might else be to human race been hid, the discord which befell, and war in heaven among angelic powers, and the deep fall of those who too high are aspiring, who rebelled with Satan, he who envies now thy state, who now is plotting how he may seduce thee also from obedience, that with him bereaved of happiness thou mayest partake his punishment and eternal misery, which would be all his solace and revenge as a despite done against the Most High, thee once to gain companion of his woe. But listen not to his temptations, and warn thy weaker. Let it profit thee to have heard by terrible example the reward of disobedience. Firm might they have stood, yet fell. Remember, and fear to transgress. The end of the 6th book.